Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Rage On podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Dean Freeman, licensed physiotherapist and men's empowerment coach. Today, I have the pleasure of having on a friend of mine. His name is Mike Ryan out of San Diego, California. He is the owner and founder of Samadhi Moss Incorporated, selling some of the best sea moss I have ever had in my life, mineralizing your body and making you feel better all around. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle. So good to see you again.
You too, man. And, I was super excited to chat with you because we had an experience together. The first time we ever met was through ISTA, which was a retreat, very intense, very deep. I helped assist it, and I got to see you go through a transformation that I similarly went through. And before we get into the depths of that, I want you to just share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, so that the audience can get a feel and a grip of who Mike Ryan is.
Yeah, my name is Mike, and I'm originally from the state of Washington, born and raised in Bellingham. From there, I spent my entire 20s on the East Coast, mainly in New York City, where I dove into a lot of different career paths and mainly found myself working in the wellness industry as a Thai masseuse, yoga teacher, worked at a lot of different health food restaurants for a lot of different superfood brands, and just kind of was throwing things together and was making a life for myself there. And then moved to the West Coast in around 2019, and have been here for about 4 years in California, and was continuing practicing massage, and I was practicing astrology as well, doing full-time astrology readings. And then I found myself making sea moss and started my sea moss business, and that's just been growing since. And I've cultivated a really sweet community around that, and it's been a really fun path. It's been really challenging in ways, and that by itself has been a spiritual transformation, to say the least. Always learning, always making mistakes, always learning from those mistakes, and we can talk about that more. But yeah, here I am in San
Awesome,
Diego.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. One of my homes and San Diego, I actually thought I was going to live full time. I remember visiting my friend Phil, who was in the Navy there for the first time when I was still in university, and I fell in love. It was my first time in California, and I thought, man, this is it. I got to get here. Once I get here, I'm going to live oceanside. It's going to be the best time of my life, and I'm going to build a business here. And it's crazy because I did that my second year out of school, and I was deeply depressed, deeply miserable, trying to start my own business for the first time and having no idea what I was doing. It sounds like you've gone through a gamut of changing careers, changing who you are, your identity, to really get to where you're at now, running a CMOS company. What do you feel was the factors in you getting to know who you really are as a man throughout this time, and what led to you shifting in those chapters in your life?
It's a good question. Well, first of all, the feeling of depression, anxiety, feeling stuck, going from job to job, career to career, not really finding my place, not really, just kind of floating around, moving from town to town, states, cities. Like I've lived in a lot of different places. I've moved a lot in my 20s, and you know, went through, a few relationships that weren't very nourishing for me, and just all of these things were just like the depression really hit when I felt like I wasn't living up to my potential as a person. And that doesn't mean that has nothing to do with money or with whatever. It just means like putting my energy towards a purpose, towards
Mm.
something that I love and something that I feel is going to make a difference in someone's life, or going to bring joy to somebody, or something along those lines, going to impact the world in some way or impact the community. um, so when I felt like I wasn't doing any of those things for myself or for others, the depression really sunk in, and I felt just completely lost. And over time, I started to realize, like after I started my CMOS company, I started to realize, wow, I'm not depressed anymore because I'm putting all my energy into this thing. It's like I'm
Mm.
channeling this what used to be depression and anxiety and kind of channeling it into this creative project. And I heard a quote once that said the opposite, or no, it said the antidote of depression is purpose. And that really resonates with me because even though my sea moss business is purposeful for me right now, I know it's not going to be my forever thing. It might be, but I feel like I have more things to do in this life as well. But this was a good reminder. This chapter has been a good reminder for me that sinking my energy into something is whatever that is for you, whether it's a hobby, um, a wife, kids, a job, a passion, a creative passion, whatever, right? I feel like having that purpose is going to alleviate some of that that negative self-talk or that feeling of isolation or loneliness in the world, perhaps.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and you brought up something that resonates from one of my last guests. You brought up how getting into this Moss company, which we'll talk all about CMOS for those who are not familiar with it and its benefits towards the end and Mike's company. But something you brought up was how you got into finding purpose in this company and finding that through this creation, through bringing this to reality, you found greater happiness, greater purpose in your life. And one of my previous guests talked about how when we rage and put it into practice in a healthy way, it's that it is our darkness in action. And our darkness in action comes in the form of creation of art. And that art can come in many forms, whether that's bodybuilding in the gym, being an electrician for people's homes, or being an actual painter, right? And in your case, your art is creating this company, creating this health and wellness company that's helping people around the world. And so everyone's had their darkness that's led to that point of finding that thing that they create and rage for. I know you've had some unique upbringing situations. Was there some darkness that you went through that led to this point in your life? And how did you get through that?
Darkness in my childhood, or more like right before this point in adulthood, just anything.
Whatever comes to life for you right now, man.
Yeah, I mean, of course, of course. I mean, I've definitely, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, damn, I'm just thinking back to just some of those days when I was living in Santa Cruz and I had gone fired from my job there. I was just like so alone. Didn't really have any friends there, was really isolated, missing my old life in New York. Just like going through that, just feeling, like fresh off a breakup too, just like, man, like what the fuck? Like, what am I doing? Like what is this life? What am I supposed to be
Mhm.
doing? And I was thinking about that the other day. And, obviously we've all had traumas when we were kids and upbringing. And I don't have to get into all that now, but I feel like just, I guess um, like one thing leading to another, as far as like experiencing darkness and experiencing those states of just being, depressed and lost and anxious. You kind of have to go through that. It's almost like a rite of passage, almost, I think. And I think that energy, like you said, fuels whatever creative passion or whatever purpose you want to plug into. So it's as if it's this perspective thing, right? Too. It's like even when you do reach that point where you feel successful again and you feel on top of the world again, it's like to not forget the times that you went through, because oftentimes we can get on our high horse and hubris can come in and we can just get prideful and forget about the all the humility that we went through in the past. And so I've definitely been knocked off that high horse a few times by just by things happening in the business or the world or whatever. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, I have to remember kind of like where I was in order to appreciate where I am now. And I still have a long ways to go. Like I'm not, I haven't reached my full potential yet. But I feel like getting there, it's been nice, but it's also been a reminder of like, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget those dark days, because those dark days sort of built, kind of fueled the energy to where you are now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that everyone's had at least one time in their life where they felt they were at their lowest. They felt they were almost going to lose it all and they didn't know what the next step was. Could you share what that moment, that specific one was like for you, whether it was a breakup or shifts in your career? And how did
What
you?
one?
Hey, I mean, whatever you
Yeah,
feel called to share, but I know there's
yeah,
so many men out there probably listening to this right now who are going through those dark stages. There is a lot of darkness in the world, and people don't know how to get through it if they haven't gone through it internally themselves yet. So,
yeah,
what was that like one that comes to mind at this moment, that situation, and how did you really move through that?
yeah. I guess the one that comes to mind firstly is um, I had just gone through a really traumatic breakup in 2018. It was a very tumultuous relationship, and after the breakup, I started experiencing some really intense anxiety that I've never felt before in my life. And I was living in New York City at the time. I was going on my sixth year of living there, or fifth year of living there, and I would get panic attacks on the subway.
Mhm.
Never happened to me before. I was so anxious over every little thing, and I kept having these panic attacks. Kept feeling like I was gonna die. You know, like my heart was going to explode, or I was like getting like tinglies in my hands, and I was just like, so I panicked, and I was like, I gotta leave the city. I gotta leave the city. I gotta move to California. And I think a lot of people move to California because they think they're gonna heal there. Me
That was
too.
me.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm gonna move to California and I'm gonna heal, right? It's not how it works. It's not
So
how it
that
works.
makes two of us, is what you're saying.
So I moved to California and it started off okay. And then I started to experience just some really intense moments of loneliness and despair and anxiety, and just things started to come back, and I had this pride, that, oh, I did really well in New York City financially. I was able to, make a life for myself there. I can go anywhere and do the same thing. Moved to Santa Cruz, bro. I was so humbled. I could not find any work that I liked. The jobs that I was doing, I was just like kind of just moving through it, and I was just really in this state, and I was meeting people there, and there's some great people there, but I was just really missing my friends in New York. I was missing my life there, and I was like 28 at this point, 28, 29ish, and I was like, oh my God, I need to move back to New York. So I moved back to New York to try to recreate what I had, which also doesn't
Mhm.
work. Um, can't recreate the past. There's only now and the future. You know. So I went back to New York to recreate the past, and I got some of it back, but most of it had left. Time had expired, and things shifted, and I found myself getting even more depressed and more confused and just a mess, right? So I was in New York for maybe 3 months. Panic attacks kept coming back, and then I moved back to California. This was like a period in my life where I was so lost, man. I was so
Mhm.
lost. I was so confused. Where do I need to be? This was all during my Saturn return as well. I was like, where do I need to be? Who am I? What should I be doing? So I moved back to California, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay here. I'm going to commit. And from there, I mean, things weren't perfect. I kind of bounced around a little bit after that, but I didn't go back to New York. Stayed in the area, and it took a number of years for me to like get to where I'm at now. I would say there was probably like 2 to 3 years where I was just really bouncing around, lost, confused, hopeless. And when I landed in San Diego in 2021, January 2021, that's when I started to really feel like my purpose was coming alive for me, and that's when I started, that's when my astrology practice was really expanding, and I was
Mhm.
full time with that. But then I started getting into the sea moss and the minerals and started developing my company. And that's when I really started to break through and did it all on my own. I had no outside funding and I didn't have much money. I had COVID unemployment money that was coming in somehow. I managed to get some of that, even though I was self-employed my whole life. But that's a whole nother story. But I like miraculously got these funds and I just started my business with that. I just went all in. And since that, I never really looked back. I mean, I've had really stressful days. I've had challenging days. I've had some, some really tough moments in these last 2 years, 2.5 years. But uh, it's just been like, it's been upwards,
Mhm.
since those years of just being totally like lost and confused. And yeah,
I feel that, man. I feel it. And I'm proud of you for continuing to rage on, if you will, to find what it is that you need and not give in. Because many of us, many men, it is hard. It is hard when you are in the dark and you can't see ahead of you, and all you see is the first step in front of you. But if you can just see that, if you can just see one step ahead of you, then you have somewhere to go. And you need to trust in that unknown. You need to trust in the process, if you will, the cliche, but it's very much truthful. And I know I've been there as well. And there's a lot of pain in going through that process of, when am I going to get out? When is this going to work out? When am I going to see the fruits of my labor? And is anyone even going to recognize? Especially as men, we don't get complimented. We often don't get noted for how hard we try, because that's just not part of culture. It's more women get that sense of accomplishment or feeling of gratitude from others. And I know when I met you, you were struggling like me with some anger, struggling with relationships. And what do you feel was the biggest factor that you struggled with in having healthy relationships? And how have you been able to improve your relationship, not only with others, but as well as with yourself?
yeah, I think I th- so for me lately, I've been getting hit with this realization that like enough is enough as far as the toxic relationships go. And it's been this year specifically, like 2024, where I'm just like, you know what? I'm looking at my past, like I'm 33 right now. I'm looking at my past, I'm looking at these past relationships, friendships too. And I'm just like drawing the hard line, man, like that hard no, like what we learned at the retreat, the hard no, like the boundary, the no, like to get the fuck out of here. So that has just been really pivotal time. It's been a really pivotal time for me because um, I feel myself starting to like reblossom and like rebirth almost into this new version of myself who just won't even entertain the prospect of toxicity anymore, whether it's a friendship or a relationship. And I had to make some really tough decisions to cut people out of my life these past 6 months. Friendships that were one-sided or toxic, or that was bringing drama into my life, relationships. So I've had a completely just I've really yeah, I've really cleaned house in a way, and I have some really beautiful friends in my life who obviously are still with me, but this year, man, it's just been like cutting so many cords and just coming back to myself and realizing that I do deserve healthy relationships. I do deserve loving friendships and mutually beneficial connections, however that looks. So that's been my biggest breakthrough, I would say. And it's been like such an amazing feeling to only welcome in love, only welcome in connections that make me
Mhm.
feel good, that are drama free, that if there is drama, it's nipped in the bud right away, and honesty, integrity, truthfulness, like transparency.
Mhm.
So that's been like a new corner I've turned, and it's been incredible. So yeah, so I feel like that's been my biggest like uh, come up this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. And I super align with those values, especially in today's society where there's a lack of it. There is a lack of integrity, a lack of honesty. Many people just straight up lying to themselves whether that's because they've been conditioned or they see other people on social media or the media or politics, just blatantly gaslighting, lying, dramatizing everything. And I don't have time for it. I don't have time for the superficiality, the materialism. Like, I want real. I don't want fake food. I don't want fake relationships. I don't have time for it. And
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of hits that breaking point. And it sounds like you did as well. But I'm
Oh,
curious before that.
100%. Hmm.
Yeah. And I'm curious before you got to that point, though, what fears or what were you seeking or chasing in your relationships, whether that's platonic, romantic, familial, that led to you having these tumultuous relationships in your life? Because I know there's so many men who are
Hmm.
in that stage in their life and they're fearful of saying that hard no or creating that boundary or letting go of maybe friends or family that they love and they've had around for so long. What did you do to break through whatever those fears were?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of times, speaking for myself and my past relationships, um, romantic relationships especially, was just recreating family dynamics, trying to solve childhood traumas or childhood traumatic dynamics with mom and dad through them, unconsciously. And with that comes, you know, toxicity, obsessing, anxious attachments, and that was all something that I've experienced in my 20s. Was I was always anxiously attached, and like it was more intense rather than loving,
Mhm.
the dynamic. And I would always attract someone who would be very unavailable to give me what I needed. And so there was this like just sort of like you really do attract from where you are at. I feel like if you're in a place where you're trying to subconsciously heal a trauma with mom or dad,
Mhm.
then you're probably going to attract someone who's trying to do the same. And you guys are just going to do this. So that was my entire 20s. And I recently started seeing this woman um, about 2 months ago. And for the first time in my life, it has felt like a really healthy, grounded, beautiful connection. And it's reminding me that it is possible. So, all the men who feel, and I've been in this place too, who feel like it's not possible or it's never going to happen or I'm too fucked up, I'm too broken, my track record is a disaster, like it can happen.
Mhm.
And so it's activated within myself new life and confidence and just feelings of happiness, even, that wow, like life really is roller coaster. And eventually you can get to this place of wow, okay, like we made it here, this is amazing, and just like standing
Mhm.
on top of the hill and looking down and seeing things for what they were in the past. It's really healing.
It's beautiful, man. And, we all, as men, we've had childhood traumas and times where we weren't supported, we weren't listened to. And it seems like that impacted you and led to some of these attachment styles that weren't healthy. And I know I've been through it myself, dealing with my relationship with my mom and my dad. And I know you shared something with me that about your family that you grew up with a sibling who is challenged physically and mentally, I believe, and that has its own unique uh, experience in life that not many people understand or have gone through. And I'm curious, how did that impact you growing up, not only in your relationship with your sibling, but as well as your relationship with your parents? And did that lead into some of these attachment issues that you had later in life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I grew up with my sister who has severe autism. She's 4 years older than me. So when I was a little kid, she was throwing tantrums every single day and screaming and just attacking people, including me. I have so many stories growing up where I would be physically attacked by her, or I had to sit at a different table to eat dinner because she would like stab me with her fork, like things like that. And on top of that, I felt like, my dad was a really hardworking man and he provided for the family, but he wasn't very emotionally available. And my mom was so busy with my sisters, so I felt like I had to be perfect. Like I can't bring any more. Even as a little kid, I would think this: like I can't bring any more trouble to this family. I can't bring any more drama or any more this or that. And my dad was dealing with like anger issues too, so he would have his meltdowns, and the house was chaotic, so it was like my parents were very loving in a way. I don't want to like dismiss that, but it was I often felt like I didn't have much room for error. And when
Mm,
I did, I would get, I would hear it from my dad for sure. So throughout my life, it was like, okay, in order to receive love, I need to be really, really, maybe not perfect, but I have to be excellent.
mm,
I have to be this way, and I feel like that kind of limits your authenticity when you live that way. And in relationships, in my past relationships, I feel like I kind of brought that in to that relationship where, okay, if I don't perform well or if I'm not perfect, then I'm not going to receive love. And oftentimes that impacted me negatively because I would hold my tongue, or I would not speak my truth, or I wouldn't express my true self. And I would just, I was kind of like confined in this kind of weird state, right? Of like wanting to show up in a certain way instead of showing up in the way that's true and authentic. And I feel like this created a lot of dynamics in my relationships too. And I felt like my past partners weren't able to receive me fully or authentically. Um, so that's something that I definitely take accountability for and own for sure. And it's something that I've
mhm.
learned and I'm still learning to master it in my present um, connection with this woman and with just like my community and friendships here. It's like, how can I show up as the real Mike and not, put pressure on myself to be a certain way in order to receive love, which is just a story that we tell ourselves based on our childhood traumas, and there's other things that happened in my childhood too that added to this, that kind of amplified this for me as an adult, which I think I've shared some of that with you in the past. But
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's just like kind of breaking, it's really getting to know what's going on in your subconscious, and there's so many ways to do that. And I know that you've done your fair share of plant medicines, and we've both been diving deep into different, avenues of how to
Mhm.
receive that information and how to just gain more awareness of ourselves. So it's just a constant learning.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I appreciate you sharing that experience because a lot of people feel that they are alone in their human experience, that they are unique. When, although we are unique individuals, a lot of us are more similar than we are different, even though everything in the world is trying to tell us that we are different to divide us and whatnot. And I'm here in Guatemala at this very moment, and you see a lot of young children who have to grow up very quickly because of the circumstances that they are in. Their
Mm-hmm.
family doesn't make a lot of money, so they might have to go on the streets selling candies and whatnot as young as 4 or 5 years old. And that can be hard on a kid. That can really lead to problems, but also there's a lot of good that can come from that. That forced pressure to grow up quickly and problem solve and figure things out for yourself. And I know you experienced a lot of the negative of having to figure things all out on your own and not be a burden to your parents because they had to deal with a lot of the issues that your sister was having. Um, but I always like to find the positive and the good in some of these situations that we often look over as bad and say, what did I gain from this? And I see you as an entrepreneur, someone who's done multiple different avenues in life and career. Do you feel that that experience that you had to go through led you to be more of a problem solver and lead you into this life of entrepreneurship?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times I had to, I mean, yeah, it's made me comfortable with solitude. um, I've always valued my solitude. I've always valued my alone time, um, as a kid, I grew up deep in the woods, which was great. But as a kid, it was like, who do I play with? It's like I really had to entertain myself a lot, um, and it was at the time it was difficult, but it has helped me, kind of it has helped me live my adult life in a way where I'm really like appreciating this time to myself, this solitude and all of that. And it's just my roommate's walking in. And and it's like it's been really interesting to be here now, look back on childhood and think, wow, okay, all of those experiences that I had as a kid definitely has made me into that entrepreneur, problem solving, sort of like, I'm okay sort of energy. Like I'm okay on my own right now, and not needing different things or people to make
Mhm.
this vision happen. Like being able to do it on my own and being able to, um, sort of just, yeah, I guess just do it just with yourself, which is what I've been doing. I mean, I've built this company from scratch by myself. My parents didn't help me. My like I didn't really have outside help at all, or not much emotional support either. So it was like, I think that's why, like I said earlier, this has been an antidote to my depression, because it's like, I'm just pouring so much of this raw energy and this wounding from childhood, all this just like into this business. And it's funny because at the same time I feel detached from it too. Like I
Mm.
feel like if the business collapsed today, I would be okay. Like I feel like I'm also healing on that end as well, where I'm not putting my entire identity into the business. It's like the business is an entity, I'm another entity. I'm just kind of helping this entity grow, and I'm very involved with it, but it's not who I am, right? So there's been that
Mhm.
too. There's been that realization and that healing as well.
Thanks for sharing that, man. Because a so many people attach their identity to so many things nowadays. It's almost a culture of identity, whether that's through your sexuality, through your gender, through your race, through your job. I know I've been through it. When I got out of university, I created social media that was based on me being a physiotherapist, and that was what I had worked for 7 years toward. And so my entire identity was Kyle the physiotherapist. And when I started to shift into what I do now, it was painful. I felt like I was dying, and I had to give up these parts of myself. And it was, in some ways, an ego death. And I know many people go through deaths in life metaphysically. And I know that you've become more spiritual throughout this process and found more attachment, or a relationship, I should say, to source, to God. What led you down that path, and how has that helped you progress forward in a positive manner?
Mm, I would say I was 21. Um, Sort of similar to what you were saying, like identifying with the part of yourself and then having to have that ego death, that identity death. I grew up a really competitive basketball player, and I was succeeding in that to some degree, and that was kind of that's what I cultivated my identity around. And then I coached basketball as well after that, a few years after that, and then I suffered this really catastrophic back injury that
Mhm.
totally wiped me out and ended my career, ended pretty much everything. And I just um, from there I sort of I transitioned into to like practicing yoga and energy work and body work and Reiki and all these healing practices I started um, to get involved with and curious about. And this was after, of course, like the 2 years of the Western medicine hellhole that I went through, of just getting fucked by the system and it was like hell. But after that, around 21, 22 ish, I was like, okay, like, cool, there's this whole other world to be explored. And so that's when I got into all these different healing modalities. And that's when I really tapped into the spirituality within myself and woke up in a lot of ways and sort of exited that um, matrix, so you say, and entered into this more holistic way of living and more connected way of living. And that transition was really jarring in a lot of ways. It was beautiful, but it was also intense because, man, the ego death was real. Identity crisis was so real. And it was a very rocky transition to get to where I am now, where it's like I feel pretty fully embodied in this way of life and looking at life and who I am. But, it was a really rocky path getting there from just one end of the spectrum to another. And
Hmm.
yeah, just through all the modalities that I've explored, I've really been able to get more connected with myself.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that, man, because I've recently found more connection, and that was after my ayahuasca journey mainly. This journey started probably 2 years ago when I started to notice certain things
Hmm.
and be more open-minded to it. And then I had that terrifying dark night of the soul experience during ayahuasca that kind of set it in stone that there were things I could not deny any longer. Uh, and a lot of men are terrified of going there, are terrified of going into their darkness. And it reminded me of Deadpool. Have you seen that movie?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. But you have to go watch it. You
Okay.
you will love it. Deadpool in the movie, if you've seen it,
Hmm.
he's just this normal guy, and he gets stage 4 cancer, and he finds this girlfriend that he loves, and it's just terrible timing. He's like, great, I'm gonna die, and I found
Hmm.
the most beautiful, perfect girl.
Hmm.
And this guy comes up to him out of nowhere and offers him this treatment, this special treatment. And he seems sketchy, but anyway, he goes, and it turns out to be this terrifying lab where people are dying and whatnot. And these are experimental things. And he goes through with it because he's like, well, I'm going to die anyway, so I might as well try. And he has to go through this extremely painful process, which leaves him looking scarred all over his body, but he ends up living and having all these superpowers, and
Hmm.
ends up eventually being able to get back with his girl. I don't want to give away the whole movie, but the point is that he had to go through this deeply, deeply painful experience to transform.
Hmm. I like that. That's a
And
really good message.
yeah, and I
I'm
know
gonna
so
watch the
many
movie.
men. Yeah, no, you absolutely. It's hilarious too. It's more a comedy, but this moment, he
Hmm.
had to go through this deeply painful experience, and he was left with scars from it, as many
Hmm.
of us are. We go through health issues, or a traumatic breakup or divorce, or in your case, you had a terrible back injury. Me, I went through this terrifying ordeal during ayahuasca, and we are
Hmm.
often so afraid of these things
Hmm.
that we stay stuck, that we stay in the
Yeah.
mediocre, that we stay in what I call the tolerable suck. Because this relationship's okay, it's not great, but I'll tolerate it. This job is okay, it's not great, but I'll tolerate it. It's
Sounds
only
awful.
until, yeah, it's only until we're pushed into the depths of our pain that we actually are pushed to make change. And I love that you share that, because it seems like going through those experiences, on the other side, you have gratitude because it's led to you where you're at now. And now you have this CMOS company, and you seem very focused on health. Um, do you connect those negative experiences to what you're doing now? And could you share more about what got you into CMOS specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely started the healing journey, like I said, when I was 21, 22. And then I started to revamp my nutrition and what I was eating, started to get more conscious of food. And that was a whole journey too. The nutrition, the food journey for a lot of people is really, it's ever changing because, like for me, for example, I was like vegan for 2 years. I was fruitarian for a little bit. I was carnivore. I was, whatever. And so it's always changing, it's always shifting, but it's always something I've been really curious about and interested in to study and to just learn more about and see what works for me. And so I started to get involved with these companies in New York who I was working with. I started selling moringa powder. I started selling like fresh pressed juice and smoothies. And I was like working for a maple water company who would tap maple trees in upstate New York, and I would sell the bottles to people. It was like this whole thing. So I just kind of learned about starting a business in that industry of spreading health products to people and food to people. And I've always loved the food industry. I grew up in the food industry. My parents owned a restaurant, and I didn't
Mm.
necessarily love that, but I was just kind of, I knew sort of, I had an idea of how the business worked, kind of grew up in it. So I used those skills I gained through childhood, and I applied them to my business now, incorporating the healing of food and medicine as food, or food as medicine. Um, and CMOS was one of those things that kind of came into my field quickly. And it was around 2020 where I started to learn about it. And then I started to experiment making my own gels and making my own creations. And it's one of those things I just stuck. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I feel so good on it. I feel like my digestion's good. My skin's clearing up. My energy levels are great. And it just stuck. And I was having fun playing around with different flavorings and different like infusions with herbs, and using my background in herbalism to make different blends and whatnot. And I just, it just, yeah, the rest is history. I just really fell in love with that. And it's been, of course, it's had its challenges and it's had its intensities, moments of intensities, but it's been beautiful in a lot of ways to be able to share that with people and to see people's reactions and progresses when they're on it, what they report back as benefits and stuff. It's been really nice to like see that, okay, like I'm making just a sliver of a difference in someone's life. That's pretty cool, or I'm promoting this, I'm promoting health in general. I'm promoting wellness as a lifestyle, which is something that I
Mhm.
really love to do. I love to share that with people. I love to share what I've learned and what I've created. I love to share what I create. So whether that's making dinner for people or giving people some sea moss, it's like it's really nice for me. So it's been a fun
Yeah.
journey for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super empowering for yourself when you can empower others through the knowledge you've gained, the products you've created. And I know I got to try your CMOS, the blue one. I can't remember the name. Don't
Yeah,
quote
yeah,
me.
the blue gnosis.
Um, yeah, and the month that I had that, I felt great. Like I wanted it every day. I wish I could have it now. I'm in Guatemala, so when I come back, I'm gonna get some more. Uh, but I really felt the effects because down here in Guatemala, you have to filter water to drink it safely. And so often I will just buy coconut water here because of the mineral content and how much better it makes me feel. And sea moss, I know, has like 100 minerals in it to truly mineralize your body. And I felt not only physically better, but mentally better. I had more energy, stamina, even libido. Are there other benefits that men could gain from trialing sea moss if they've never heard of it? Because I know sea moss is kind of becoming the rage nowadays. And so, what could men really seek to gain from utilizing it as a supplement in their life?
Totally. Yeah, I'm glad that you experienced all that too. That definitely makes me happy, and I'm glad that, I can't wait to share more with you for sure when you're back in the States. But for men specifically, my favorite benefit is definitely, it's a life force replenisher. So for men specifically, post ejaculation, it's really good for replenishment. I found that with myself and also with other male customers that it does slash the refractory period like in half, because you are eating, and it's funny because it is like the same consistency as semen. It's really interesting. And when you eat it, it doesn't taste like semen, but it does have a similar consistency. And when you eat it, it's like you are replenishing most of the minerals that you lost, if not all the minerals that you lost during ejaculation. We lose zinc, we lose magnesium, we lose sodium. right? So this is all like replenishing that. And when you eat sea moss in its raw gel form, like within the first 20 minutes after ejaculation, you're like ready to go again pretty soon,
Mhm.
which is a fun and unique benefit of sea moss. And I find that the next day it's less of a hangover feeling, less of a tired feeling. um, it just really does have a way to replenish that life force that we lose. um, and I have a blend with kidney supporting herbs as well. And in Chinese medicine, when we ejaculate comes out of our kidneys. And so with sea moss, with the kidney supporting herbs in it, that one specifically, it's called the Aphrodite. That one specifically is my favorite for post ejaculation for sure. And it does have libido boosting properties, and it does improve cognition and energy. And it does, yeah, it has a way of just oxygenating the cells, so improving immunity as well. And um, yeah, so I think for men, it's a great tool. It's a great biohack for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend it. I can't wait to get more on my hands. I'll specifically pick up that one when I come back. And I also just love that you care about the quality of your product, that I've seen you go straight down to the Caribbean, to Grenada, and really sourcing it directly raw, as opposed to a lot of companies try and rope grow to make the best profits nowadays. But you do it
Yeah.
the holistic, most natural way possible to get the best product. So I appreciate you
Mhm.
for doing
Thank
that and
you.
not cutting corners. And I think people should know that. We got
Thank you.
a few minutes left. And so I just want to ask a few last minute questions, and then we'll hit you with the final question before we go.
All right.
Uh, this podcast is about rage, as you know, it's in the title.
Mhm.
And today, right now, I want to know who it is or what it is that you rage for. I believe that rage is one of the deepest forms of love. I've shared earlier that it is our darkness in action. It is creation based on that fuel that we have. Is there a specific person, reason, or cause that you currently rage for today?
Hmm. It's a good question. Um, yeah, this cause changes a lot. Um, lately, I've been I've been really raging against rope grown sea moss companies who um, that creates um, like a dangerous obstacle course for sea turtles. I've
Mm,
seen several YouTube videos lately of giant leatherback sea turtles getting caught up in these sea moss rope grown farm, tangled up in all the ropes and stuff, and people having to go and rescue them. And it just pisses me off, man. I'm just like, really, that just really gets me going because I love sea turtles, and to see these like hungry money, or these money hungry like rope grow farmers out there with all this like fake sea moss suspended on ropes, just compromise the safety of marine life and sea turtles. It's just like, it's just pisses me off. It's like, why do you got
yeah,
to do this? On a
yeah.
more macro scale, I can't say I'm involved very much with. I mean, how do I word this? The world is crazy, as we know, and I would say I definitely raged against um, the whole like vaccine mandates a few years ago when that was going on. That really fired me up. Um, the government and big pharma not promoting health and just having their own agenda to make a lot of money, that really always gets me going. Um, don't even get me started on
Mhm.
our government here and everything going on. But I can get into that. Maybe that's a whole nother podcast episode. But
Yeah,
there are macro things that get me going, and then there are more micro things that get me going too, including
yeah,
like a sea turtle that gets caught up in the sea moss web. I'm like, like, come on. and I'm always shouting it out on my Instagram, like, look at what's happening. It's bringing awareness to people, and I do donate 1% of all sales back to protecting sea turtles, and I donate to the organization who goes out and rescues them from the rope farm companies too. So that's kind of a way for me to give back to these smaller organizations and people too. But
Yeah.
yeah, hope
I
hope
love
that
that.
answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I love that giving back to Save the Turtles. It's beautiful. And I just want to reflect something back to you to think about is I think everyone talks about raging against something because of the band Rage Against the Machine, who consequently nowadays is supporting the machine. It's
Yeah,
strange.
I know. What the
Um,
hell's up with that?
but that's a separate story. But I just want to, and this is not just for you, but for anyone listening, that I don't believe in raging against anything. I believe in raging for something. Because when we rage
Or something.
against, we're raging out of anger or hatred or fear. But when we're
Mm,
raging for something, so you are not raging against those companies, you're raging for the love of turtles and sea
right.
life.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
when you're,
Mm,
uh, you know, whoever it is, you're raging for something, because when you rage for
mm,
something, you're raging out of love. And you
mm,
can always go much further out of love than you can for the anger or the hatred. And so that just goes for anyone out there who like has this anger or this rage, whatever you want to call it for you, to really shift your perspective into I'm raging for someone out of love, for this thing out of love, for these people out of love, because you can go much further and for a better cause.
mm.
So I appreciate you sharing that, but I was just like, I just
Okay,
want to
thank you for
reflect
that.
that
Thanks
back
for
to
that.
him.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess I wasn't clear on how to word that, but you're right. And I guess raging for physical autonomy and discernment and people, feeling free in their bodies and not being told what to do, and raging for, health and wellness to be promoted out to people instead of the alternative, what we're experiencing
Mhm.
now. And yeah, raging for healthy marine life and sea turtles and stuff. So yeah, I agree. So
Yeah.
just to correct that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
just a shift internally that it takes that anger, if you will, away, and you're like, no, I just have so much love for people that I want them to be empowered with health and wellness and the right information. And I'm not going to get angry at you. I'm just going to work hard to rage for you because I love you. And that just
Mm,
feels so much more settling in my body. And that's why I love sharing that with people. That's like the why I have this podcast. And I
I
know
love
you
that.
only got a few
I
minutes
love that.
left. So let me just get into the last couple rapid fire questions. So just
Sure,
quick
sure.
answers.
Hmm.
What's one non-negotiable activity you do daily to keep you at your best?
Hmm. Have to be in the sunshine. I have to get sun. I have to get sun on my face. I have to get sun on my body. If it's not sunny outside, um,
You just cry in bed.
I just cry and be I'm just depressed. No. I gotta get movement in. I gotta get movement,
Yeah.
some form of movement. Some form of movement, sunshine. Movement and sunshine is optimal. But if there's no sun, then just movement and then cry in bed because there's no sun.
Yeah. Feel that. Good thing you're in San Diego. It's a big reason I'm here in Guatemala. Awesome.
Yeah.
Next question. What food is your guilty pleasure?
Ooh, guilty pleasure food. I have to say, like a rich, delectable brownie with ice cream on top. Yeah,
I,
like a
I,
warm, gooey chocolate brownie with ice cream. Yeah,
I
can't
love a
beat
brownie
that.
sundae, man.
Yeah.
Love it. What brings you the most joy in life right now?
Mm, it's a good question. I love that. Um, Man, I'm trying to think of what one. I mean, a lot of things, but I would say right now, um, bringing joy to others.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
that answer.
yeah.
One more, and then the final question. What is one thing very few people know about you that you wish more people did?
Huh. I would say my level of sensitivity and the sensitivity of my heart. So I feel like oftentimes people see me for the first time or they meet me and they think, okay, this guy is like maybe he has a like people see me and they think one thing, maybe oh this guy seems like uh he's not very sensitive, like he's good or he must be super confident or he must be hard exteriorly, has a shell. Not like I'm walking around with a shell, but I think I don't know. I've heard this from other people reflect back to me that like yeah, when I first met you or whatever, I didn't think that you were this soft and sensitive inside. I thought you were like whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'm a softie.
Mhm.
Like yeah, even though my job is really intense and I can be straight up with people and I can show up in certain ways, like I'm still very much like yeah, yeah, I got a pretty sensitive heart, so
I think a lot of men could resonate with that too as well.
definitely.
Awesome, man. Final question for you. Uh, if at this moment I hit a button underneath my desk here and your microphone would speak to the entire world and everyone could understand you, everyone spoke English for this brief time, what message would you share with every human being at this current moment today in society in 2024 that you believe they need to hear?
Man, these questions, bro. Let's see. I love them. I would say this too shall pass. Let's keep it simple. Whatever you're going through, it will pass eventually, or shift or change eventually. Where you're going through right now is not your permanent place. Even though you think it is, it's not. So um, keep moving forward. As Winston Churchill says, we're going through hell, keep going. There's something on the other side of it.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
man. Beautiful. Your microphone is off. Uh, Mike, it's been beautiful chatting with you, getting to know you a bit deeper and sharing your story. And for those who are interested in learning more about you, connecting with you, as well as obtaining some of your CMOS, where could people connect with you and get themselves a bottle?
SamadhiMoss.com. If they're in San Diego, they can visit us at the farmers markets. Everything's on the website. Like there's a tab on where to find us, but you can order just on samadhimoss.com. And if you're an international customer, just send me an email on the contact sheet of the website. We can figure out shipping quote and a way to get you some CMOS.
Awesome, man. I definitely recommend you at least try some CMOS from Mike and see how it impacts you. I guarantee that if you get a bottle, you will notice the differences. I've had it for myself, and I wish I could have it every single day and not drink green powders. I would rather CMOS every single day than freaking green powders. Um, it's just like, cannot stand that crap, honestly. But Mike, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your heart, sharing your story, sharing some of the darkness that you've been through and how you've persevered and raged on to find your purpose and let go of the things that have been holding you back and continue to find who the truest form of Mike is to inspire all those men out there who are on that similar path in those similar struggles to know that we're not alone and that we're all a mirror into each other's soul and that we are in this together more than anything. So everyone, Mike,
Thank
Ryan,
you.
thanks so much.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. Good to see you too. Can't wait for you to come back to the States and we can hang out and I can feed you some sea moss again.
Yes, yes, from a golden spoon.
Exactly. All
All right, brother. Talk soon.
right, man. Peace. Thank you.